Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Anna Kurian and I teach in the Department of English at the University of Hyderabad. Today we are looking at Paper 2, Literature of England from 1590 to 1798, and in this we are looking at the drama and prose of the 18th century. Today we are considering the work of William Congreve, and we shall be looking at his play The Way of the World. Now, when we look at the drama of the 18th century, what we are interested in surveying is Restoration drama. So we are thinking in terms of the long 18th century as well. We are also thinking in terms of a drama which is in very stark contrast to Renaissance drama. When we think of Renaissance drama, primarily the drama of the great dramatists of English such as William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, Thomas Kidd, or Ben Jonson and John Webster, even Beaumont and Fletcher, we are thinking in terms of a certain seriousness of topic and a certain respectability to the characters themselves, even when they are doing not so very respectable things. However, the Restoration and the drama that follows thereupon is much in contrast to all of this, because the Restoration, once it takes place in 1660, first of all marks a revival of drama in England with Oliver Cromwell and the shutting down of the theatres in 1642. What happened was that there was no drama whatsoever until the restoration of Charles II to the throne. Now, through the 1660s and the 1670s, there is a new kind of drama which is characterized by a lot of witticism, which has very intricate plots and subplots, and which is morally, shall we say, to a certain extent bankrupt. So there is a certain cynicism which is valid within the plays and within the worlds that the plays show us. There is also, even as there is a lot of wit and humor, it's a wit and humor which is founded upon sexual intrigue and which is also founded upon duplicity amongst the characters. So nobody is utterly honest. Everybody is not wicked maybe, but definitely cheating on everybody else. And they're all of them doing this in an atmosphere of great wit and humor. It was also a drama which was devoted to the urban aristocratic classes of the period. So this was called the Comedy of Manners, and it dealt with lifestyles associated with the rich, the courtly, and the aristocracy, and it represented humorously the follies and absurdities of their social conduct. However, one must keep it in mind that this was not meant to be satire. As such, there is no question of improving their lives. They are all busy in doing whatever they're doing. So it was a representation which then showed us their faults, but was not necessarily directed at moral improvement. So it is in this atmosphere and in this new style of drama that we see playwrights such as George Etheridge, William Wycherley, and William Congreve functioning. Now, these plays dwelt upon sexual tension and intrigue. So there is a lot of sexual comedy which takes place over here, and affairs are par for the course. Affairs which are also extramarital, premarital, all of these happen, and they happen regularly. There is, of course, disguise and deception. Given that there are adulterous affairs, deception also is then the norm. And there is considerable intergenerational conflict, and these are some of the standard tropes which are employed in these comedies. It is also concerned not with the moral implications or with deep emotions, but with superficial manners and the conduct that can be seen in public. So the focus in these plays is on a superficial understanding of what the court and the courtiers did in their everyday lives, rather than on what they felt or what they ought to have been. Towards the end of the 17th century, what we see is that public taste began to turn against such comedies. They believed that it could not continue in this immoral fashion, and it was necessary. The open immorality of the Comedy of Manners came in for some criticism, and drama turned towards a more genteel and a more sentimental and a more moralistic middle class drama, rather than this very upper class drama that was in vogue till then. Now, William Congreve, our playwright for the day, was one of the last major writers of Restoration comedies of manners. And he started his literary career with a comedy called The Old Bachelor in 1693. It was an instant success in spite of the fact that its plot was rather loose, but the wit and the humor in the dialogue was said to transcend the looseness of the plot, and as such it was a huge success. His subsequent plays, such as Double Dealer and Love for Love, showed him developing in all realms. So even as his dialogue, of course, had always been good, now his characterization, his plot construction and his style, all of them improved apace. Way of the World is the final comedy that he writes, and this was published in 1700, and it is today accounted to be his greatest dramatic achievement, though in its own time it did not achieve the kind of absolute success that his other plays did. It also marked the end of his brief career as playwright, and even though today we see it as the acme of his career as well as the acme of a restoration drama as well, what we now see is that at that point in time nobody really appreciated it. The Way of the World, we now move on to a brief summary of the plot. Lady Whitford, who is vain, who is prosperous and gullible, does not approve of the marriage which is proposed between Millamant and Mirabell. Now, Mirabell, the reason she disapproves of this proposed match is because Mirabell had earlier paid court to her, or rather she believed that he had done so. What we discover, of course, in the course of the play is that Mirabell has also had various alliances with Lady Whitford's daughter as well, who is now married to somebody called Fenel. Now, Lady Whitford, because she is outraged that Mirabell threw her over for her ward Millamant, refuses to accept the proposal that he brings for her ward. This, of course, then leads Mirabell to devise a trick by which she can be fooled into believing certain things, and then he will be able to blackmail her into giving her consent to his proposal for his ward. So what he does is that he gets his servant to agree to play the role of his servant, whose name is Mr. Waitwell. He agrees to play the role of a suitor to Lady Whitford, and he is then to appear as Sir Rowland and will then propose to Lady Whitford, and Lady Whitford, then having accepted his proposal, will then be blackmailed, because then she will realize that he's just a servant, he is not a country gentleman, and therefore in disgrace she will agree to what she wants. However, now we have a new person entering into the scheme, and this is somebody called Mrs. Marvot. Mrs. Marvot comes to know about this plot, and she informs Fenel. Now Fenel is somebody who is son-in-law to Lady Whitford, but is also carrying on an affair with Mrs. Marvot. What we see therefore is now there are a whole bunch of people who are having affairs with everybody else. So Mirabell has already had an affair with Lady Whitford's daughter. He was paying court supposedly to Lady Whitford, and now he wishes to marry Millamant. Millamant is the only person who's not so far had any affairs. Fenel has married somebody who is Lady Whitford's daughter, but is also has had a premarital affair with Mirabell. And Mrs. Marvot, who is now having an affair with Fenel, is also interested in Mirabell. So basically everybody is involved with everybody else. And what Fenel does is he threatens Lady Whitford that he will expose his wife's premarital affair with Mirabell, as well as tell the world that Lady Whitford was about to marry an already married servant. Once all of this comes out, Lady Whitford appeals to Mirabell to help her to get rid of all these problems, and says that if he will do so, then of course she will agree to his marriage to Millamant, her ward. Her problems are compounded because Fenel says if she does not do what he wants, then he will expose her, but what he desires is that she will transfer her own fortune, her daughter's fortune, and half of the ward's fortune, Millamant's fortune, to him. So basically he's blackmailing her. So once all of this happens and she asks Mirabell for help, Mirabell then of course thwarts everything by coming in the role of a Duke's ex machina and saying that he is actually the trustee for Fenel's fortune, Mrs. Fenel's fortunes, and therefore nobody can then do anything. So what we have at the end is of course a happy ending, because Lady Whitford agrees to the marriage of Mirabell and Millamant, and they then are enabled to get married. And it ends happily only for the main couple as such. Everybody else continues to be miserable in various kinds. Now, the play as such is seen as significant because it is the epitome and the acme of Restoration drama. It has all the typical features of the comedy of manners of the time. These include, of course, sexual intrigues. Like I said, there are at least 3 people who are all involved with 3 other people at any given point in time. It has deception, lots of lies, lots of secrecy, which is going on all around, plenty of witty dialogue. There is intergenerational conflict. So Lady Whitford, who is in control of Milliman's life because she is her guardian, refuses to give her consent to her marriage and so on and so forth. And above all else, there is a mercenary attitude to relationships. So all relationships are calculated on the basis of how much wealth will accrue to the people involved rather than what they feel about each other. Of course, the exception to this is the Millamant-Mirabell relationship, which has both money as well as affection as a central part to their relationship. He presents the manners and morals of the age in a funny way. So we do laugh at all of this. So we are not also then condemning the ways in which they behave, whether it is their sexual deception that they practice upon each other, or whether it is their utterly mercenary attitude towards relationships. The play supposedly reflects the reality of contemporary English upper class. So the Restoration Society was itself seen as being a little corrupt, and the play also shows us that corruption, where material concerns govern relationships and love and romance are not really so very important. However, what we see is that a lot of the action is also demonstrative of not just the, shall we say, corruption or evil that pervaded that society, but also about the eccentricities of that society. In addition, we are shown that Mirabell and Millamant strike this balance between 2 extremes. So where everybody is corrupt or everybody is deceiving of everybody else, Mirabell and Millamant are more or less honest to each other. They are, of course, witty, they are humorous, their relationship is governed by a lot of humor, and yet the others are all seen as lusting after money or lusting after other human beings. Now, when we look at the structure of the play, what we can see is that 2 main significant items, one is dramatic irony and the other is the presence of subplots. Now, dramatic irony arises when the audience has more information about something that is happening on stage, about the action of the play, than one or more characters on stage. It is a device that is used by several dramatists, most popular in plays such as Oedipus Rex, where everybody in the audience would have known what was happening to Oedipus Rex, that he had killed his father, that he had married his mother, whereas he himself was, of course, completely in the dark regarding this. Now, Congreve uses dramatic irony in the text to bring about resolutions, of course, but also to complicate actions. Now, Lady Whitford is deceived both by Mirabell as well as Fenel on 2 accounts. One is that Mirabell does not, of course, inform her that Sir Rowland is only a servant in disguise, and Fenel and Mrs. Fenel have not informed her that Mrs. Fenel had a premarital affair. Now, these 2 instances of dramatic irony, which are informed to the audience but which have not been informed to the characters on stage, complicate the action, and it gives us a certain understanding of what is happening or what is likely to happen. So when the characters try to deceive one another, they will work on the basis of information which they believe is available only to themselves. Thus, Lady Whitford does not know about certain things which Fenel believes that only he knows about. The premarital affair of his wife is one such example. Having known about this, he then believes that he can use it to gain certain advantages for himself. Basically monetary advantages, where he wants her fortune, he wants half of Millamant's fortune, and so on and so forth. The resolution comes about because then there is a double use of dramatic irony. We discover at the end that Mirabell is the executor or the custodian legally speaking, for Mrs. Fenel's fortune, and therefore then nobody can sign it away, least of all Lady Whitford. So there is a resolution which comes about because of dramatic irony, and it's a dramatic irony which is unrevealed to anybody until the final moment of the play itself. Now, in addition to dramatic irony, we have the use of, in this play, subplots which are crucial to the understanding and the complication of the main plot, but also then give us both an amusing foil but also give us a resolution to the main plot itself. The use of subplots is something that is fairly common in Renaissance drama, but definitely more so in Restoration drama, and these subplots are used to advance the action of the main plot and complicate it, but also as a foil to the main action of the play. So if you were to think in terms of subplots, one example which then provides a foil to the main plot of the play would be King Lear, where you have a story of a father with 3 daughters, which is mirrored in the story of a father with 2 sons, and where both fathers then of course face ill treatment at the hands of some of their children. Now that is a subplot which then provides a foil to the main plot. Here what we see is that it is not about so much providing a foil as complicating the main plot. Now if the main plot is seen as the desire of Millamant and Mirabell to be married and Lady Whitford's stopping of that desire, then the subplots include, and this is the first one, Mrs. Marvot and Fenel trying to stop Mirabell's plan of deceiving Lady Whitford. Now when Mirabell comes up with this plan that he will get his servant to behave like a country gentleman, propose to Lady Whitford and then marry her, he is putting in place a small plot which will itself advance his own desires. But once Mrs. Marvot and Fenel come to hear about this, they then intervene in that and they expose this, and in doing so then this main plot is complicated as Lady Whitford is thrown off her, is thrown into some confusion, and then she discovers that she cannot really do anything very much about this, and she discovers that she is in trouble. The second subplot which we have is about Sir William Whitford, who is potentially Mirabell's rival for Millamant's hand, and who is sponsored of course by Lady Whitford, and who Lady Whitford is very certain that he is the right man for Millamant. This subplot, which is funny, is also cleared up because Fenel gets him drunk, eliminates him from the scene, and therefore then the road is made clear for the marriage of Mirabell and Millamant. Now these are subplots then which derive the dramatic force, both in terms of showing us the psychological motivation which is there amongst the characters, and it shows us the consequences of their action, and it helps us to finally arrive at a comic resolution to the entire play. This comic resolution is of course marked also by both humor as well as surprise. So when we hear that Mirabell is actually the legal executor for Mrs. Fenel's fortune, we are also then struck by surprise. And there is the element of predictability, which is that the 2 central lovers, Mirabell and Millamant, are enabled to get married. If we are to think in terms of the characterization of the play, what we see is that even as they belong to stock stereotypical characters, they are also given some redeeming features, they are also giving some individualization. The hero of the play, Mirabell, is typical of the Restoration beau. He is clever, he is extremely charming, but he is also manipulative. His polish and his charm is matched only by his cynicism and his mercenary nature. So he is this composite of somebody who is beautifully charming, but who is also then very much on the make. So even as he is seen to be in love with Millamant, he is also shown to be somebody who, even though he is in love, does not want her if her fortune does not accompany her. So he is selfish, he is ruthless, and yet he is also capable of self-reflection. And this self-reflection is what sets him apart from the others, and which is why we say that this particular play, The Way of the World, is exemplary, because even as it is typical of Restoration drama, it also stands as something which is something more than the usual stereotypical examples of Restoration drama. Now, when Mirabell is seen to be selfish, entirely self-centered, and this we see the fact that he had an affair with Lady Whitford's daughter and even made her pregnant, and then of course got her married off to Fenel. So in effect, he just does things for his own self-serving interests, and yet he is also charming, and the ways in which he quotes Millamant, and this is marked by both wit as well as humor, and the wit is of the kind that is sparkling, matching that of Beatrice and Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing. He is also a good judge of character, and this is seen by his assessment of Fenel. Fenel, who is a corrupt figure, is seen as both the antagonist of the play, but also as the foil to Mirabell. Now, Mirabell is the protagonist. He is perfect in all his ways, even though he's manipulative and even though he's cynical. In opposition to him is Fenel, who has absolutely no redeeming qualities. We will come back to discuss Fenel in a little bit from now, but first let us instead look at Millamant. Now, the heroine of the play does not have as major a role as Mirabell, but is seen to be a perfect match for him because she is also, like he is, charming and witty and polished, but she is also self-possessed and pragmatic. Now, this pragmatism is something which is important to notice because both of them see money as essential. Now, love conquers all and we will live in a cottage and live on nothing, love and fresh air is not a creed that either of them are willing to subscribe to. They both believe that money is essential. So, Millamant's fortune is something that she is not willing to forsake, even for the sake of marriage to her lover, her one true love, Mirabell. Likewise, Mirabell is not willing to give up the fortune if it should go away to Fenel and yet marry Millamant. So money is seen as essential to the idea of marriage itself, and between the two of them they represent the refinement of feeling and conduct that was there on the Restoration stage during this period. Now, of the other characters, the one whom we see a lot of is of course Lady Whitford. Now, Lady Whitford is first of all vain. She is also self-delusional because she does not judge other people. She believes that Mirabell courted her because of a real interest in her, as opposed to what most people see as he courted her because he wanted to gain access to her ward Millamant. Now, she is deceived in herself and she is deceived in others around her, and she fails to judge other people correctly. The fact that she is delusional is also seen in the fact that she gets fooled very easily by a servant who dresses as a country gentleman. So when Sir Rowland arrives on the scene, she is immediately swayed by him, and she does not recognize the fact that he is from the servant classes. So you also have then an indictment of Lady Whitford, which is based upon her absolute lack of recognition of what is truly a gentleman and what is maybe just a servant. This is of course also implicated in the class politics of the time. Now, the antagonist, Fenel, is the corrupt version of Mirabell, out only for personal advantage, as manipulative as Mirabell himself is, but lacking both in his intelligence, in his refinement, and his Mirabell has this capacity for true feeling which Fenel is unaffected by. Now, Fenel is of course caught in a marriage wherein he is married to somebody who is actually had an affair with somebody else and might be carrying that person's child. But all of that is irrelevant because Fenel is also carrying on with somebody else and has, in addition to that, only one governing desire, and that is the desire to have more money at any cost, even if that requires resorting to blackmail. Now, therefore, Fenel comes across as somebody who has no redeeming characters whatsoever, and therefore then work for only personal advantage. We have minor women characters. You have the servant Foible, but you also have Mrs. Marvot and you have Mrs. Fenel, who's Lady Whitford's daughter. Now, all of them in one sense stand together because They're all seen as morally corrupt. They all have extramarital, premarital affairs. They're all doing whatever they want to do. But they're also seen as victims of the men in their lives. The men in their lives are the ones who manipulate them, who push them around, and who leave them with little or no agency. So Mrs. Marvot, who desires to have an affair with Mirabell, is willing to then entice him in whatever way is available to her. Mrs. Fenel, who's already had an affair with Mirabell, has made him the legal executor for her fortune, because that is the only way in which she can keep it safe from her husband. And what we see is that all of these people, especially these women, are only motivated by the need for financial security. The servants, like the masters themselves, are again driven by finances, and they mimic the same manipulative and scheming ways of their master. So none of them is really seen as a rounded character. All of these are seen as more or less flat characters who do not really develop in the course of the play. These are people who arrive in the play fully developed and remain so through the play. If you were to think in terms of the major themes of the play, one of course is money. Money is all over the place. The next is love and marriage, as is usual in comedies of the time. And we also see class distinctions and class hierarchies which are at work within the text. Now, monetary considerations, and these, as we can see, or as we have already seen, influence all the relationships which are there within the play. And these are also what are central to the plot and the movement of the plot, as well as to the movement of the subplots. It's also central to the resolution of the play. One thing which we have to see is that the idea of romantic love, which in earlier dramas such as that of the Renaissance transcended mere monetary and financial requirements, over here is complicated because there is no romantic love which is exempted from financial settlement also. So material concern and romantic love go hand in hand. Neither Millamant nor Mirabell are willing to settle for a marriage which will cost them their inheritance. So if they are likely to lose their money, then no way. Right? So romantic love then is subservient to the idea of money and financial gain. All other relationships also are motivated by and powered by the desire to have wealth and the financial considerations which cause these ones. So when we think about Lady Whitford initially refusing her consent, and her consent is marriage is possible, but Millamant will not then be carrying her fortune with her, which means in effect that she will be richer. Mrs. Fenel, who recognizes the fact that Fenel is interested only in her money, has already then put that money away safely, securely, by making Mirabell the executor and the trustee for that money. So everybody in one sense is motivated by financial constraints, and those financial constraints are what make them work in the play to cheat and deceive each other. So what we see over here is a trivialization within the text of marriage itself, even as romantic love is mocked to a certain extent. We are told that Mirabell and Millamant definitely are going to get married. There might be loyalty within that marriage, but all the other relationships that we see are not necessarily powered by either love or loyalty. And the most obvious example is that of Fenel and Mrs. Fenel, where there is a premarital affair which has already made Mrs. Fenel pregnant, and Fenel knows about it and is willing to settle for it because of the monetary advantages that will accrue to him by virtue of this marriage. We also see that the servants participate in the plot to deceive Lady Whitford because of money. So finally they wish to improve their social position and they wish to make more money, and that is why they both participate in the plot. So money is seen then as governing everything that takes place within this society, whether it is at the level of the servant class or whether it is at the level of the aristocratic classes. The play makes a rather sordid comment on the state of matrimony during this time in Restoration England, because we see Fenel's marriage contrasted to the proposed, and about to happen marriage between Mirabell and Millamant. Now, Fenel's relationship, as we saw already, is based with his wife, is based upon mistrust, and it is based upon deception. Whereas what we see is Mrs. Marvot and he having an affair is just as problematic, because there they are both of them jealous. He is jealous of her desire to have an affair with Mirabell, and they are all of them insecure. So marriage then is this very uncertain kind of situation where everybody is uncertain of everybody else and there is no happiness possible. Mirabell and Millamant, we can, by a stretch of our imagination, say that they represent the possibility. It is only a possibility of trust, affection, respect, some understanding within the institution of marriage. So if the institution of marriage is to be redeemed at all, it has to be redeemed by these people, not by anybody else. So then, when we have looked at the themes, we have looked at the characters, we have looked at what Congreve does in The Way of the World. In conclusion, what we can say is that the play combines social criticism with humor, and it shows us the best, as in Millamant and Mirabell and their relationship, the best and the worst aspects of relationships in the society of the times. Now, most of what we see is actually the worst, but there is also the possibility of good within this. And while all the characters seem to be driven by greed and by vanity and by selfishness, they also receive some form of punishment at the end of the play. So there is this whole moral judgment thing that is happening within the text as well. The moral vision of the play itself can be seen to be comedic, and it is, insofar as the protagonists are going to be united in marriage, it falls in line with the requirements of a romantic comedy. But it is also gently satirical, as people who are greedy, motivated solely by money or by vanity, they are then punished at the end of the play. Right? And it is only those who are capable of genuine feeling and of self-examination who can be dignified in their conduct, who are given any form of reward at all. We are also told by critics that when we look at a play such as this, we should separate moral judgment from appreciation of drama. And that's an interesting way to think about this, because if we were to judge it morally speaking, then we would not be able to appreciate it. It's only by separating the two that we can enjoy a drama of such kind. 20th century critics have also then considered the play as representing a fine balance between self-awareness and social wise. And there is a tension between satire and moral judgment within the play as well. We have been looking at various aspects of The Way of the World. I would recommend, of course, as always, that you should read this and read the lesson on it. And then you will know far more about Restoration drama of the time. Thank you.